Okay, it should be on. Okay, so we're all here to talk about GPT-5, the new features. I do have slides that we'll go through, and at the end of this, when I've been through the slides, I'll go through some of the tools as well that I'll cover. And before we go in, you can pop in the chat window to let me know if there are any questions you have about GPT-5, anything that's come up for you. You feel free to unmute. And of course, we're also going to dive into Notebook LM. I know, Ivan, you and we've worked on Notebook LM before. So, we're going to look at a couple of the new features, some really, something I discovered today as well. So it's really interesting. I'll go through
Oh,
some of those points. And is there anything before we kick off? Any burning questions? Anything you feel that you want me to hone into that would support you? You're here, you're giving up your time, so I want to ensure that we tackle, address any of those questions. So please let me know.
just the meaning of life. There you go. Just joking.
It's good to see you on, Ivan. Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
That's going to take a lot longer than what this session. Okay. So yeah, please feel free to stop me or ask me. I really don't mind. I want it to be as open and safe place, and there's no such thing as like this, you know, it doesn't matter if it sounds a little bit like, okay, well, what did you talk about then? What does that mean? I really don't mind. That's why I put these sessions on to kind of support all of us, right? Because we're all in this together. That's the key thing. We're in this together and things are changing really quickly. And so for me, it's about ensuring we stay ahead of the curve. Okay, I'm gonna share my slides and please let me know if you are unable to see or if it's all good. Then if you raise your hand, I may miss you, so feel free to unmute. Okay, I'll keep a check on the actual chat, but just in case, please let me know. Okay, so where we are at the moment, where what we're looking at in today's session for this 1 hour. We're looking at the next wave, and if you haven't seen or already know about it, on August the 7th, we heard that GPT-5 came live, right? It was the launch of their kind of flagship GPT. And so we'll be discussing GPT-5, and also we'll go into looking at mastering Notebook LM. I'll mention how I've been using it and some of the kind of new features in that. Okay, yeah, so these sessions, Leaderize, these are bi-weekly AI sessions. They run every other Wednesday, and today's 20th of August. And so yeah, they, let folk know they are open to those leaders wanting to step up and really kind of understand what's happening in this space. Okay. And so we're going to be also in this session, we'll look at some of the public perception of these tools, because what I've managed to do is look at what people are saying about GPT-5 and some of the responsible applications. So I'll kind of give you some insight into that. And you may have experienced some of those teething issues at the beginning. And some of those have been ironed out, but some of them have continued, and you'll see kind of people talking about that here. So today's agenda, we're going to be, obviously, we've mentioned this, we're going to be looking at kind of what's happening in this space with GPT-5, and we'll also go into some of the jargon. Some of you may have heard things like, oh, you've got like tokens and context windows, that type of thing, and going beyond text to voice, vision, and we've got things like how to get best results. We'll be talking a little bit about prompting, although I have got more on prompting, however, but some just kind of recap some of the practices that we can ensure we're applying, and some public sentiment and critiques, right? Some people are kind of, pro five, and I'll say why that happened as well, and what OpenAI have done or are planning to do as a result. Risk and responsible implementation. We always talk about that because it's really important. We're mindful of some of the risks and our responsibility as we're implementing these tools. As I mentioned, we'll be looking at Google's NotebookLM, and if some of you haven't started using it, I will kind of encourage you to use it. It's free. There's so much we can do with it. And there are a couple of new features in that. So, and also some takeaways. What are some of the things you're taking away? What are some of the steps that you will apply based on today's session, which will be really helpful as we move forward. So, in this space now, we are seeing things moving really quickly in this space. As most of you, I know you've mentioned to me previously that you've been using a lot of the tools, and we've talked about kind of creating our own GPTs, but we've seen a massive shift in these big players. And these big players, of course, on the screen, we've got OpenAI with, where they started. They started back with GPT-3 back in 2020, June, which was kind of their better product for developers. And then they launched to the public, which we saw in 2022. And I think it was like January that most people started seeing or started getting GPTs on their devices. It was about January 23, February, and even people kind of in March going, I've just got GPT, and it was like already a few months in. And so we've come a really long way from the old days of GPT 3.5. And we'll see, and you will have experienced this yourselves and how you're using it. So it became kind of this public consciousness of what we're able to do. And it felt really remarkable then. And now it still blows our mind what's possible in this AI space. And then, of course, what we saw in, shortly after with some of the hiccups with 3.5, it wasn't that long after we saw GPT-4. And it felt like a massive shift. I mean, certainly for me, I was already using it quite a lot then, and I saw this like the nuances, it was understanding, and it felt like a real shift. And then we started seeing 4.0. It was a bit strange because I think the way OpenAI got their numbering, it wasn't really that intuitive. I don't know if it's a developer's thing. I was talking to one of my, kind of part of a mastermind group. We were just joking about how could they get the numbering not quite right. But anyway, we then started seeing these mini models. If you will remember, like O3, O4, we spoke a little bit about that. And, we were talking about what the capabilities are, the reasoning, it uses up less tokens, that type of thing. And then a couple of weeks ago, we saw the release of GPT-5, and now that's become their flagship kind of thing where where we had the mini versions. What's happened now, it's almost like it's become this one go-to place. And so for some of us who've been used to using these other models, they're no longer there, apart from one, which is now because of kind of some of the critiques that OpenAI had with 4.0. That now you can access, and I'll say a little bit more about that with some of the kind of the feedback that they were getting, because suddenly what happened from one day, you had access to these other models, and then it was almost, it was, with the notion that it would just be in GPT-5, and there was a bit of backlash there. You may have heard, perhaps in social media, or perhaps you noticed it yourself. So the big players we're still seeing, as we've mentioned, with OpenAI, and then Google, it's a bit of a race at the moment. Who's gonna win this? These big players are out there, and then we've got Anthropic with Claude. Some of you may be using that model. and then meta as well, right? So it's becoming an interesting space, and I imagine that a lot of us actually here would be using a combination of different LLM models in this space, right? So there may be others, right? Like Manus, you might be using DeepSeek. There's all been these other kind of models that are out there. And we're seeing much more of this massive shift at the moment. So this is kind of a bit of context, really, and seeing what's happening in this space. So when you get, when you're reading and hearing a little bit about some of the jargon that sits behind this, and things like token. And when we think of tokens, we're like, okay, what is that? Is that a character? Is that a word? And it's just the way these large language models break it up is they're seen as units of measurement, something that could be a word or it could be part of the syntactic structure. And then it's seen as a token. That's what it's saying, right? So if it says you have so many thousands of tokens, and I still, part of, like I was reading up about Gemini 2.0 and, OpenAI's GPT-5. And there were different views on this. And I still find Gemini 2.0 is really fast when I'm thinking of tokens and outputs, that type of thing. We're also seeing things like context window. That means like how much it can store in its memory, an amount of text tokens that the AI can remember at any one time during a single conversation. So it's like it's a short-term memory for conversation. And what you will have seen is a shift in how much it can retrieve without getting lost. I mean, when we saw with the old models, it would start losing kind of the thread, if you like, or it would lose parts of what was fed into it. But now with this is what makes it really remarkable with the large context window. And I was looking at this, it's got like something like 256,000 tokens per se, right? So that it can have in any window, which is huge, in that it will remember that much in kind of using, and so how far we've actually come in this short time. So um if you've got, like I said, if I miss any questions, please stop me and ask, because we will go into the tools as well today, and and also share some of the experiences that you've been having. So in GPT application for us as leaders, as coaches, business owners, we've got advanced text and data synthesis. We know that we're able to synthesize vast documents. And now, with having, especially with GPT-5, because of its capacity, we're able to upload books, right? Large PDFs, but large books. In this, we can upload a whole book basically. And so, I see it as it's our co-pilot for analyzing due diligence, such as like extensive reports, and also be mindful of the type of content, obviously, what we're putting into these models. We've got, just moving across, we've got two true multimodality. It analyzes, especially with the GPT-5, which the flagship that we've talked about. You may have noticed this where you upload presentations, interpret product design images, feedback. A lot of us will have already started doing a lot of that already. What I found actually, because we've got image on here, I really like and I'll show you actually an example. I am now the image generation has improved vastly in the new model, which I find really kind of interesting. And you'll see an example of things we're able to do with the like moving kind of, previously where we couldn't change lettering, or it couldn't really, understand when we'd say, write, perhaps even, write AI. projects or something, it would get kind of, it would get confused, or it would misspell. It was a bit clunky then. But now what we're seeing is able to do that, but it's able to remove items within images that we give the actual model, which I think, like if you're putting something, so if you're uploading an image, or it's created an image, and then you ask it to remove various components within the image, I mean, it does it, which is, it is incredible. Um, a real-time voice. We've had this and we've experienced that with four, but what I really like is this translation component and voice. Now it's got different accents as well, which it didn't have previously, if you've been experimenting with that. And the simulation. So when we talk about simulation, for Dana, perhaps this would be of help. When we do coaching simulations, what I found really helpful is simulating those conversations with a client, coaching, like getting feedback. And you can do it and with these tools. We could do it for sales conversations. We could do it for board meetings. If we've got board of directors, we've got different hats on. And of course, most of us have been looking at meeting transcriptions. Some of us might have already put their notes, which we can summarize meetings, and where we're understanding themes, especially in the space of coaching. We're looking at certain themes that come up, merge, and action points, right? What are the actions that need to be we've agreed on, or accountability, that type of thing. So moving on, strategic and communication support, we're thinking of complex market scenarios and stress testing some strategies. I find that really helpful, because it doesn't matter what field we're in. We'll come on to this a little bit about if we're not, there's always biases, right? And if we're not testing these, we're not looking at sort of comparative analysis, or we're just not looking at different perspectives, or even checking our own thinking, right? Or because the thing is, the tool, if we're not careful, it will agree, and you will have seen that it kind of starts agreeing with us. And of course, I always say it massages our ego, but that doesn't help us move, take the next steps. So, and also draft nuances, communication tailored different audiences. So what we want to do is we can tailor things for different audiences, and it's able to do that. And that comes through the prompting, and how we use these LLM tools, any of them, right? So this is and I'll continue.
Hey,
So
Bally,
yeah, I'll
just
ask a question.
can I
Yes.
ask a quick question?
Oh,
In the simulation for difficult conversations, is that after you've already had the call and you've got a note taker in there, and then you can, okay, let's put the transcript in, into chat and ask for advice? Or is it some kind of real-time simulation somehow?
yeah, great question. You can do both. And the real-time conversation you can definitely do. And by that I mean you could um and this comes to prompting. What you can do is you can do this in a GPT, like create a GPT with the so you give a role. So for example, one of the scenarios could be that you're a CEO of a company, experiencing, so there's redundancies that need to be made. You're going, so you give it a scenario, and then you feed that through, and then you're the coach that would then coach that CEO through that, and you can simulate that using these tools.
I got it. So you'd create a GPT and you would just have the client use that asynchronously, not during the coaching call.
You wouldn't do it during the coaching call. No, you wouldn't do it
Yeah.
during. So
Okay.
you could do it as a part of training other coaches. Perhaps you could do it as a scenario that came up. You could
Yeah.
do it, say you want, if you've got sort of, ICF credentialing and were there things missed in that, you can get instant feedback through these tools, which is really powerful. So the simulation bit is really, so you then give me sort of feedback, be the critique. We're going to have this conversation, and following the conversation, give me kind of feedback based on our conversation here. Was there anything I missed? Was there anything I could have delved into? Were my questions sort of geared to this? So it's really powerful in kind of having those conversations that I've seen happen, and it's been done really well with various tools.
Beautiful. Thank you. Can I ask one more quick question?
Of
And you don't
course.
have to answer it now if it's not the right time. I am struggling to find a tool that's good with numbers. Is there anything that you recommend, whether it's analyzing a series of reports with numbers or just anything to do with numbers?
Okay. Now this new version, GPT-5, supposedly is good for that. So it
Hmm.
might be worth testing out with regards to numbers. You know, and so I know that um, Edge and the Gemini tools, that's very good for numbers too. But I can look into this a little bit more. Perhaps anyone, if you've got experience of that, or you found a particular tool, have you found any tool? And let me just see if I've got. Let me just see the one I've been using. That's um, and I can also share these afterwards. The kind of tools that
Mm.
I find. Has anybody had any experience with?
I've found ChatGPT okay for numbers. Is it gonna blow your mind? No. If you're asking it to do a cash flow forecast or something like and analyze some say past cash flows, as in real numbers and actually generate a forecast. It does, but it's kind of quarter based or it's kind of annual based. Trying to get it down to a month, I find a bit of a challenge. It's doable, but you have to kind of lowest common denominator conversation. But it generates stuff if you're actually analyzing numbers and you're asking it, tell me what you think about ABC or where do you think expenses can be dealt with. It'll actually give you some answers there.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan. The one I'm also thinking of is Google's AI Studio. Now, this is a paid version, so I'll look into it, Dana, and that one I do use, and it does have numbers that have it might be what you're looking for.
Okay, great.
Okay, so we can definitely kind of explore that a little bit. And it's a great question. Okay, so prompting. So in terms of prompting, nothing's really, I mean, just to kind of continue prompting as we have been talking about is in this instance in the five, it's suggested that we also treat it like a colleague so that we speak to these models. Some like people have been talking about their models, they've given them names, it's amazing. Like they have a lot of conversation, like open conversations with these models. And so you just have a natural conversation. You might ask the tool to give you step-by-step reasoning. That's always helpful to break that down. There's also research coming through that people are thinking less because they've got these models. Now, actually, if we asking them the model to go through those steps, we're actually reasoning with it, but we're kind of having that conversation, which is really powerful rather than it kind of just giving us information or churning out things. We're kind of understanding its process or thinking behind that, which I find really That's the bit I find really helpful, because even when I was putting these slides together, I was putting some content together, that it still tries to direct you in a way which we don't want, right? So, and this is where I always say to people, because there's a bit of, fear of like, well, if we got these tools, we don't need to do anything. I really believe that you still need people in the loop, or humans in the loop, as they're saying, because it will try and take us in a different way, and if we don't know, we'll just assume that that's the way. So having those step by step, and you're going, okay, is it now? Okay, so why are you doing this is really important. Start tone and style when we want it to be casual, and perhaps we want it to, give us explanations, without kind of the technical jargon. We can ask it to do that. I also really like it when I, provide examples. Now, you don't always have to do that. Often, if we give it examples, it has something to work on. If we've got a certain format or something that we've utilized before, we know it works. One, we don't have to keep going back to primary prompt, like to start from the beginning. It's like I always use the analogy of like Ford doesn't start with their old versions, like we don't need to always do that. We have things that are working. We may tweak, we may amend our prompts. The other thing is provide so specific context and length. Context is really important for LLM models. You will have noticed that perhaps background and like context act as a acting as a marketing director, provide four concise bullet points. What the models tend to do is they always go with threes, because this seems to be the consensus that people want threes. And you're like, okay, I can see now the patterns of how people are generating content, because it was and you can start seeing certain things that you're picking up, certain cliches coming through in how content is presented. So just to kind of be a little bit, I can say a little bit about that afterwards. Practices. Some of this is going to apply for those using APIs, and and so I'll say where that comes in. But the key thing is to lead, so leverage context, mention that, provide background information to guide the model. Be clear and specific in your prompts. And so, and one thing I found really helpful is someone who can be a bit wordy. I've had to, like, learning how to be really concise is like, okay, I need to be concise. Otherwise, it's going to go off, and this is not what I want. So it's, being specific to the point, a really powerful thing to have and learn. And so by doing that, hopefully our meetings will be shorter as well as we move forward. But the key thing is we kind of use this best practice. Adjusting parameters. Now, this isn't something we can necessarily do in our open, in GPT, in that environment, but in the open AI environment, we can actually, more we can talk about temperature meaning that stick to the facts only, like with the numbers being lower, if it's like a 0, 1, and you can adjust it. And so if you're connecting, say, your GPT to external apps, that type of thing. And when you're creating that, that goes into, say, when you go into the OpenAI, if you haven't used that, I can show you what I mean. And also max tokens. So you can sort of say only a few tokens. In other words, you don't want to max out your tokens. Some models will give you, they're restricted on number of tokens, because then you've reached your capacity for the day. You can minimize that. But by having smaller tokens, you're asking for a more of a succinct response, as opposed to a lengthy kind of response. And the other thing is iterations. Refine your prompts based on the responses. So it's an ongoing thing. People often say prompting is king, but what I'm gonna say is it's definitely important. And as we go into this space, as we go into more automation, then we're going to be considering kind of thinking about the process within that. And I'll say a little bit more as we continue. So the actual hype. So as the version was introduced, there was and again, what I started doing is looking at people's comments and looking at how people were experiencing the new model, and we did have a bit of a divide. And then, as most things, anything new that comes out and people move from something that's different, there are always going to be those one teething problems with new, when there's been an updated version of a upgrade in this instance. But nonetheless, it was a little bit clunky. You may have noticed that yourselves. And the enthusiasts, they were like, okay, this is great for coding. And we've seen examples of this where there's debugging tasks. You don't necessarily have to spoon feed as much, is what people are saying. You understood the intent, and the intent may have been understood by memory that it has in the actual model. So we've not had to kind of spoon feed it per se. However, um, if we're starting a temporary chat and we're asking it to, erase a former memory, then we may still need to kind of give it context still. A lot of people are saying it's a massive upgrade, and what we're seeing is certainly for developers, this is like a real massive shift, and this is what I'm hearing. Um, and so for us as creators, as business owners, what we're going to be seeing is it might have been slow to begin with. Maybe it was less accurate in some instances, perhaps the voice as well. Like often found that, there were still hallucinations. It was still making things up, although, we heard that it was reducing hallucinations, but we still saw some of that happening. And personality, lobotomy, so responses felt a little bit bland, short, corporate, lacking conversational style. It might be that people, how they're using the tools, possibly. Perhaps I did experience this initially when I first got GPT, where it was a little bit like, okay, this is sounding different to 4.0. And this like Sam Altman talked about kind of GPT-5 being the PhD level intelligence as opposed to 3.5, or it's like a college, just a undergraduate kind of level, if you like. And people are saying, well, actually, it's not as intelligent as you're saying. But, so forced migration widespread. So what it did was, I mentioned at the beginning, it forced people to kind of just have everything in one place, whereas they could pick the different models. And now it's great that they've got 4.0 back in its environment. So we'll see that in a few moments. So I don't know if you noticed that, where you kind of, it's just one place, which is great. It's, if you're anything like me, I like to go to one place, everything's there. However, if I felt it was a bit clunky and it wasn't doing what perhaps the mini versions, because all of those are now, if you like, being encompassed in that bigger kind of flagship, but still 4.0 is still there for those who are wanting that. So in terms of risks and responsibility, be mindful of managing your data. Public models are not private. Think about your proprietary data, thinking about kind of, making sure that you're not uploading info that you wouldn't leave the door open for people to access. These models are still being trained on what we're giving it. And so just be mindful of what we put in there. Accuracy, AI is a co-pilot. We still need to be, humans checking this. I wouldn't, give it kind of rein and just say go with it. I still need to check what it's, providing. And this is where our expertise, and this is, there's a little bit of fear of these, they will replace us. They will replace us if we're not in the loop and we're not checking for errors. And if I'm spotting errors, and you will as well, right? intellectual property, IP, make sure that we are mindful of that, cost management. So for things like API cost, once we think about automation, are we clear if we're working with teams? Are we clear what those guidelines are? Because they can really increase the cost if we just let these machines run and we're not kind of managing them. So people are finding different ways around that where it's cheaper using automation like N8N. We spoke about that last time. And it's not for the purpose of this conversation, but still something to be mindful of because it doesn't seem that expensive initially. And then suddenly, if you're doing lots of these automations, it can up the costing. Skill atrophy, we're seeing, there's conversations about like, oh, it replaces critical thinking. I feel that that will be the case if we're not questioning what these AI, tools or augmentation is providing. So it shouldn't replace it. So just we be mindful of that. Let me just see if people have got any questions, and I'm going to show the model. Dana.
I do. So, two questions about that last slide. You said understand TOS to protect IP, and I'm wondering what TOS is. And then the other question is, where are these costs coming from? Because I just pay my monthly fee. So are there other hidden costs that I don't know about?
Those costs would come about when we are connecting them to APIs. When we're connecting our models to other apps, then we may have hidden costs. So, for example, if we went on, have you used um, let me see. Have you gone on to OpenAI, you know, um, the main company, because GPT is a product of OpenAI. So you may have seen that possibly. So let me go into what I mean. So, okay, I'm gonna share and then you can see, right? So it won't apply, Dana, until we start doing things like this, okay? So when we go into Safe, I log on, and then I go into API platform, okay? And what we'll see is this is something that, say, developers might use when they're connecting. So, for example, if we want to connect our GPT with other apps, then what we would do would we do it through these various tools. And this is where we would use up our tokens and things like that. So it's not something for now necessarily, but say if you were instructing someone to automate for you, and then they had a fee or an automation and they were linking those to various apps, that's when the pricing, not so much for what we were talking about here. I don't know if you can see this. So,
Yep.
when we're thinking of the pricing, so, where we got the free version, I don't know if you can see that appearing on the screen. I don't know if you've got the pricing showing up.
Oh, no, the pricing is not showing up.
Okay, so let me just show you. So if we go in on here, so if we go into, we've got the pricing here, which is the limited access to, this is what people having with the free version. The free version is actually, I mean, it's pretty good, right? And then, of course, most of us here would be on this, and it's like what, $18, Dana, for you that you're paying. So this is giving me the UK prices,
I
and
think it's a little more than 20, but it doesn't matter. It's around there.
it's about that, yeah. And then you won't have any other hidden costs in that. That won't um um incur for you, and then of course we get this, and then what it tends to do is once you get then it's kind of, if you've ever been on The Voice and it says you've used up your limit, or and then it'll say, oh, you can upgrade, and then you go back into the model, and then at that stage you wait a few hours. I mean, most of you probably noticed that if you wait a couple of hours, go back, we can start using again. Has that been everyone else's experience? That you,
Yes.
yeah, perfect. That's great. Hi, thank you. So that's always good, right? Okay, so it's prompting us to pay, but and then we just go back, and I'm like, good, it's reminding me to have a break.
Bally, I have a question.
Sure.
When you sent us that email, with ChatGPT-5, when I tried to use it, we had different models, and I saw just now on your screen 3 models. But when I tried to use it, I could access only, or I could see only ChatGPT-5 and ChatGPT-5 Nano only.
Oh,
There was
wow.
no the mini. Yeah, I'm not sure. But this, of course, with the free model. And I tried ChatGPT Nano for a couple of hours, as you said, and then it says, you've reached. You can use it at, a specific hour because you have consumed, I think, the free trials.
Yeah, you ought to have. I mean, I know its context window is lower.
Mm-hmm.
Let me show you, like when you go into the GPT environment, that's where we want to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let me show you the GPT environment. So you've got that. One thing
Thank
I
you.
really love is I'm using a browser called Deer. And I actually, at some point, will go through how powerful this is as well, but not for now. But I'm going to show you, like, say you've got GPT-5, and then are you seeing this? Hi, are you seeing this when you log on, when you go into your GPT? Because because we saw that the free
Mm-hmm.
version gives you the capability to um, you know, to um to have this.
I have a different maybe interface. Is it because it's a free one, so I can see the advanced tools that I can use on the left side. But then when I click on the GPT-5 Nano that I could use, then I can see GPT-5, Claude, DeepSeek, Grok, all the other, tools. Or am I on a different interface maybe?
Oh, you might be. Yes, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
You're probably on something like I came across today. Let me show you.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I know what's happened. You're probably on something else, like something like this. Um, let's see, came up earlier. It might not give it to me again now. When I logged in earlier, it gave me a version with DeepSeek. It didn't give me the other model. So it's very confusing. That's something to be mindful of. It can be really confusing. So what you want to do is to go into, so you saw where I was, right? You're looking
Mhm.
at, so chatgpt.com. That's the
Mhm.
one you want to go into. And and then what I've done is I've linked it to my Gmail account. You don't have to, but I just found that like it. But then I spoke to someone yesterday who had like they had two accounts, one on their phone
Mhm.
and then a different one on their device. Now that can get confusing because then, well, it would for me anyway. Maybe it doesn't for someone else, but it does for me. I like things to kind of, I know I got my device and then I can use it if I'm on the go or if I'm on my screen, I've got access to it. So, and I like that. And of course, you can close the window. Just a couple of things I'll point out. You've also got their legacy model, which is 4.0. This is the one
Mhm.
that wasn't showing a few days ago. And now, well, actually, they put that back in there, which is great because this is the one that I think that, as I was saying, that backlash there of like, oh, you've got everything, but we want to go to more conversational ways of doing things, and it's kind of not doing that for us. The other thing you may have noticed is, of course, we can close the side window. At the bottom of here, we've also got, oops, let me see if I can go to the bottom. Oh gosh, why is it giving me so much? Yeah, it's a bit cumbersome, right? Because you have to go right to the bottom to get to. So, okay, so if I go to remember this used to be on the right-hand side of the page. Now what we've got is we want to go through the settings, or so what I did was I went back to the personalization setting because I felt I had to update that. And this is something to be re thinking about as well. Like, obviously you can change the voice here if you like. You can also do the voice on the right hand side, but you've got the schedules at the moment. It's still a bit clunky here, but personalization I found really helpful. Look, my memory is getting filled up, so I need to manage that and then clear that out. Otherwise, it's like it's really getting to a capacity. So that's something to be thinking. A reminder to myself too here, right? And then you've got one thing I really liked is the personalization is on. And let's see if it goes back to notifications. But let's see, why is it not showing my preferences? It's given me, so I just clicked on that on button. What I did was something for, we can all do this, right? You know, where you go into optimizing your GPT, it's a good idea because you can obviously turn this off when when you don't want it to know who you are because it starts picking up. I've also asked it to give me obviously no reference, no AI reference, but I also wanted to make sure that it doesn't give me any just gives me stuff that I want to hear. I want it to be my critical partner. I want it to challenge my viewpoints, and I really want it to, give me a contrarian view. I don't want it to just agree with me. That's the worst case scenario for any of these tools because it makes me feel good, but it just doesn't do what I want it to do. So I've gone in and I tidy that up to ensure that it kind of understands who I am, right? So and I will say um, challenge me. Don't give me, just kind of your first response. Make sure you're challenging me and, that there are things that I'm not seeing. As coaches, we're aware of that. And when we speak to other people, it's worth reminding them of that as well, because it will give you things that we want to hear. So something to be thinking about. So we can close obviously we can close this, or we can open it up if we want to, just as a clean environment there. And before I
Thank you,
go,
Bally.
yeah, you're
Yeah,
welcome. Oh gosh, I don't have
thank
too
you.
long because I've got to go into NotebookLM, which is amazing. You're going to love it. Ivan.
Just a question, just for clarification, probably a dumb question, but I'm going to ask anyway. The memories thing is that within your space and your environment and it stays secure in there, or because I have memories switched off, okay? So that I don't want things uh, going into the wider world, so to speak. Are those memories kind of go into the larger world anonymously, they tell me, but if it's switched on, or are they still within your ecosystem?
It's a great question. I mean, when we're in this space, a lot of our own behavior is being picked up by various other tools. We're on our devices, we're going from one thing to another. So the models, when they say they're being trained, they're trained on how we're interacting with these models. And I, one thing I found is there must be some a scope for information going out, because when I do my Perplexity search, which is the AI search, no longer Google search these days, Perplexity AI is the way forward, it picks me up. So in a way, it's boosted me in this space of being a coach. So it doesn't concern me in that way. So, and what I'm doing in a way is saying I'm not adding anything that I wouldn't put out in the public anyway. Like I wouldn't like utilize, like I'd want it to know that I show up in the world like this. What I show up, how I show up in the world in this space is the same I would show up for my clients or anywhere else. So, yeah, and then,
Okay.
so is it content 100%? Probably not, but that doesn't bother me. But it might be something you're like, I don't really want it to know anything
Okay.
else. Yeah, does that?
Yeah, that's helpful. The other thing, for information for everybody, is when you're on the screen and you look up in the top right-hand corner, you will see like a little cloud thingy in the top right. If you click on that, it actually puts it into temporary mode, which means you can ask it all sorts of stuff and it won't put it in your chats. It's just you can say, okay, who's Dana, Galen, douche, come up with some stuff and you can go, oh, okay, that's really interesting, and move on from there. It doesn't record it in the column on the left. So I found that really helpful because I ended up with a long list of stuff and you go, oh, junk, 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 junk.
Yeah,
Anyway,
it's a really good thing to do to put the temporary chat on, because sometimes all you want is to go with a plain slate. You don't want it to infer stuff that's already happened, or it's like having a conversation with someone who's not seeing, like who know about you. You want that fresh perspective. So yeah, it's a great thing to do, putting that on.
okay,
Yeah, I would do
cool.
that. So great. Yeah, it's a great suggestion. Yeah, you'll see it's on the right-hand side. And if yeah, so great point. Yeah, I love it. It's really
Awesome.
helpful. Yeah,
I'm going
it's
to shush now.
no, it's brilliant. As we're in this space, I think more and more of us are learning. And you remember what I've also heard is different experiences using these tools. So, having these conversations are really helpful, because sometimes we can think, is it just for me it's happening? And then you're like, okay, what can we do? One thing I really found in this space is knowing that, one, we're growing, but it might be um, leaning more towards more of a bias if we're not mindful of that. So it's great that you asked. So let's move on. We're going to move on to the next part, and this is looking at Notebook LM. Is anyone not using Notebook LM? Is anyone new to Notebook LM? We might have.
I haven't used it.
You haven't used it. Okay. So
No.
you're new. Everybody else has used it.
Nope, I'm new, Bally. This is Hayat.
Ah, Hyatt. Okay, Dana,
Mhm.
I can see saying not
Yeah.
use Notebook LM. Okay. This is going to blow your mind. And we may have to do a little bit more longer on this, because it's something that I found amazing. And it differs from having, and I'm going to be biased, of course, right? And I'll say why that is the case. Um, and not even that I'm biased, because I found so much help. I mean, I've used it so much, and you'll see in a moment. So so what is Notebook LM? And then I'll go straight into it. I think the key thing is for me to show you rather than talk about it. So it's Notebook LM is it's free and it's grounded in kind of their Google's free kind of access to Notebook LM, and I'm going to show you how I've been using it. What we can do, the magic with Notebook LM is a bit like having RAG, which is the retrieval augmentation generation, right? So that means we can upload, add documents which stay secure in that environment. So they stay in that environment and we can upload it. And the amazing thing is, I understand we can upload something like, let me just double check that before I say that. We can upload in any one source 200 megabytes per source. And that blows my mind to think we can do that much, right? So that's incredible, right? Oops, let me see. Let me go back to, sorry. Which is, and you're like, okay, what does that mean? So we can put any notes, PDFs, any materials, training materials. We can put it up into this model, which I'll show you in a second, and we can retrieve information from those notes. So it's a bit like capturing when we upload things in our GPT. We can ask it to look at that and come back with it. Now, the difference between GPTs, it will fill the gaps, and it will fill. It's because it's kind of it's, if you like, it's been trained to do that. It's basically its job, right, to fill gaps, and that's what it hallucinates. However, when we upload our own documents, it will go into that document and pull out information that we can use. So let me show you what that looks like. So and I'll share, you know what I'll do? I'll share these links. If I don't put them in here, I'll share these links with you. So you have the links. So let me go straight in. And it looks a bit busy at the moment. It's just the way they've updated this. But say, for example, NotebookLM, you can see how much I've been using it. I've been putting like my debriefs. I put my book chapter in, and then I put this AI leadership. So what tends to happen is, in fact, what I'll do is when you go into this free version, it will look like this, where you can upload you Google Docs, you can upload a file, you can upload a link in there, and it stays in this environment. So, and I'll show you how I used it, because I know we're running out of time. So I just want to make sure. So for example, in this instance, so I can just go in and delete this. Okay, I can go in here. So now the great thing about this is I uploaded my file. What it does things like audio overview. The new features within this is the audio it does, and it takes a few seconds to have the audio, which if you're someone like me that likes to have things read out, you had like a podcast that it kind of reads off, and it takes a few minutes. So when you're playing around with this, and we can pick up on this next time, and then it also does video overview of your slides. The one thing that I found absolutely amazing was adding, we can actually go and find web sources related to my material. So in other words, I can actually upload a file, say something I'm working on or a book. I can then ask it questions by typing into this. I can look at my sources. What I also did was I actually went online. It still gave me the access to going into the web search, and I uploaded another document that was similar to support my writing. So imagine I'm writing something, putting it together. I can upload something that will support my writing. That I find absolutely fantastic, because it means that I don't have to go out of this space. I'm still using my document. I can create additional notes to it. I can have an audio overview. I've got a mind map. These mind maps are really helpful. So if we're thinking of like different stages, it might be a little bit quicker than the audio. Yeah, it might be a bit quicker. So we get things like this appearing. Do you know what I mean? It's like I find these really helpful. That is from the document that I gave it. So I was looking at high redundancies for certain jobs using AI. This is kind of what the space is like. And I was looking at some research on lawyers, but I know we've gone on to time, and so I won't take too much. Have not used, oh, Anita says I've not used NotebookLM. I'll just keep you for one more second, because I'm going to encourage you to use it. And I will skip this bit, but these are some of the, I'll share these slides with you because I've ran over. Just as a takeaway, as we just come to finishing, there is a bit of polarization with GPT-5, although it's in these sort of early stages. NotebookLM, maybe this is one for us to pick up on. If you would like me to, I can go into it, look at cases, how I've used it, because I really, really like it. I mean, it's one of like my go-to places, and the fact that we can upload so much. And just as kind of a reminder, mastering prompting is still skill is key. Um, and innovate responsibly. So please experiment with NotebookLM. I'll share these slides and looking at prompting with a critical view. And we will meet again in 2 weeks' time on the 3rd. And I'm excited to hear how you all get on. And thank you. I know we've gone over time. And thank you for your patience. I hope you found it helpful. Takeaways, and I will put that free link in and what the NotebookLM is. And if you'd like me to pick up on that, I'm happy to do that next time.
That would be great. Thank you so much. I'm wondering too about confidentiality with uploading documents.
You're good. You're good. I've been playing with NotepadLM for a while, and as long as you just check the settings, to keep it private and not share and all of those things, because a lot of these things by default will always put you into the Borg, into the collective, yeah. But if you opt out, you're pretty safe. But every time they do an update, guess what? Okay, so just be careful of that.
Yeah, and it's like, it's like Google Docs. We've got stuff in our Google Docs. We can retrieve things in our Google Docs if you like. And you obviously look at the settings. We can definitely do that, Dana, because it's contained in that space. And then we're using it in that space as opposed to GPT, where it's drawing on LLMs. What it does, you can find sources. You can say now synthesize this into a way. Give me the citations. What's, that type of thing is so powerful because we're working with our own materials.
So would you feel comfortable putting client information into it?
Yes.
I have if it's private information, I'd anonymize it. I'd anonymize the information.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I've used it. I'm quite blown away with NotepadLM. As long as you tick all the right boxes, that's the key. You've got to make sure that you've switched everything off and that. But the podcast thing is just awesome. The video, I don't know if you played the video thing just yet.
This is beautiful.
We came across it the other day, and it was like, wow, this is awesome.
My ducky, I love.
Yeah.
Wait, Ivan, I can't hear you. I'm sorry. Can you?
Sorry. I've got my Lumen microphone over here, so I had to rush off to the door earlier. I was just saying so I wrote a thing called Resolving Business Partnership Conflicts, and it talks about people, so I'm quite happy to use it. But what it does do is actually, if you get it to generate a video, it'll anonymize the video content. And again, all dependent on what boxes you've ticked.
So it will generate videos?
Yes.
Yeah. And we'll
like a slideshow with words which contextually are just like, and then you can the only thing I haven't figured out yet, and it's one for Bally when I catch her next week, is how do you get it to use your voice? But I'm sure there are other tools out there that'll do it, But it's I sat there and I went, I've got to have a beer for sure.
Yeah.
My challenge has been really putting all things together, and I have tried. So I really love Claude in a way that it helps, like you can put the documents and extract information. But then again, the limits of tokens, like you can only do that much within one conversation. and then you have to start a new one and upload the document again and to synthesize it. So for me, this is like a great discovery to play with this. Very excited. Thank you, Bally, for sharing. Really want to dive deeper into how to leverage this more, and especially like from a perspective like not losing ideas, because you store something on Drive, you store something between your conversations, you have something in notes. So and really the aspect of not giving it away for the general use kind of like storing. So that's very, very valuable piece of function.
Absolutely. And I'm excited to hear how you're going to be using it, because you're right, with Claude, it's clunky. You go back and then it loses that. Here, you've got full control of it. You saw I've been using it for the last year. And that's the free version. So the capacity with that much storage. And people say we can put our data here, and we want to anonymize it, clean up that and use it. So if you've got lengthy documents, papers, research papers, books you're reading, and you want to get some information, say for a session or for a conversation, you've got that without having to go through all this other stuff. So it's really powerful, and have it heard and create, like you said, Ivan said, the slideshow is really incredible. So yeah, it's I'll put all the links in, and I'm excited to hear how you're all doing, and appreciate your patience because we ran over. And thank you so very much, and I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. And share if there's something that you'd like me to focus on. More than happy to do that. We will dive into this and look at security, because this has come up a few times today, so we can dive into making sure we're using these responsibly. Now,
Thank you so
have
much.
fun. You're welcome. You're
Thank you so much, Bally.
Take it easy, and see you in 2 weeks'
Um,
time. Take it easy, and
Thanks.
I'll
Bye-bye.
share
Bye.
slides with you. Ciao for now.
Wow.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.